What's up? It's your boy Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse, coming back to you live on the Black Muse podcast. I have to explain my voice right now. I have something. I don't know what it is. I haven't really been feeling any kind of symptoms. I don't really think it's COVID. It might be some kind of respiratory thing, but my voice has been like gone for like a week and a half. It's awkward, but the show must go on, so I'm gonna continue to press through. I got my tea here, my ginger lemon tea with honey. It's delicious. So I'll be sipping on that. But I'm very excited to be back on the stream with y'all live, and I got a very special guest yet again from a social audio app known as Clubhouse, and I want to bring him on real quick. So without further ado, it's my man Benjamin. Ben, you are now live on the stream. How are you doing?
Good, thank you, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Can't complain. It's been a while. We've had to reschedule a couple of times, but you're finally here. How does it feel?
It feels good, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
That's what's up, man. And I'm glad that you are here. What I want to do is I want to start by kind of fraternizing with you a little bit. I would love for you to tell my audience how we know each other. Where do we know each other from?
We know each other from Clubhouse, which is a social audio app.
And what kinds of things do people do on Clubhouse? How do people interact on Clubhouse, in your opinion?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, people spend time at Clubhouse. People open rooms and clubs, which have topics. And then people will go into those rooms and clubs and participate in conversations concerning those topics.
That's a nice way to put it. Is there any bad stuff that happens on Clubhouse?
Not at all. There's no toxicity whatsoever on a social. Why would there be anything toxic on social media?
There's no racism or anti-Semitism or anything like that on Clubhouse. It's just a fairy tale land.
Wait, have you seen racism and anti-Semitism on Clubhouse?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I guess I'm not going into the right rooms.
Fair enough.
Well, let me just say, I mean, yes, it's a microcosm of the actual real world. So just like in the real world, a certain percentage of people will have offensive, racist discussions. Most unfortunately, that does happen on Clubhouse and other social audio apps. So yes, we have seen that.
I think that it's probably impossible to weed the social media world 100% of toxicity, because I think it's kind of a part of human nature, so to speak. I think that people are going to be toxic sometimes. And there is something to be said, and it's kind of going to be eventually what we talk about more directly, but there's something to be said about building resilience to and ways to mitigate against toxicity in social media environments, where people have access to you they otherwise wouldn't have, like remote access to you. Yep. And people kind of have a platform that enables them to share reprehensible views that may implicate you or people like you based on immutable characteristics, let's say. So there is a kind of like genuine danger there, if that's not too loaded. But I do think that there's a lot of value that is also enabled, not just the toxic stuff, but like the remote access to people you otherwise wouldn't access with gives you access to the contents of their mind when their ideas aren't so reprehensible and when they're, enlightening and can give you a different perspective. So I don't know. It's kind of a mixed bag with Clubhouse. But what has been your experience with Clubhouse?
My experience has been good. I've enjoyed it. But yes, I've encountered much of these issues that you're discussing now. I mean, my experience, the good parts of the experience, I've made a lot of friends, participated in a lot of really good conversations with very intelligent people like yourself. For those of you who don't know, Jason runs a couple different clubs, but mainly centered around debating the topics that he likes. So he opens a space and people come and he moderates and conducts debates, and things like that have been amazing because you can, just be sitting in your home on your phone and have people in the room from all around the world and debating. And so it's been very amazing for stuff like that. There have been some amazing spiritual rooms on Clubhouse and clubs where people get together and talk about all kinds of spirituality, philosophy. We have music rooms where there's both live and streaming music, and people creating music and playing it together in real time, which wouldn't, ever be able to happen without the technology that we have. So all that good stuff is there. And then, on the negative side, yes, people do come into the rooms to express despicable views based on immutable characteristics. That does happen. If people don't like a person or a room, they can open a room about that person, and those kind of toxic things happen. We've seen that. So people can be doxxed. We've seen all kinds of things. So yes, there are good and bad to social media.
I can't wait to see the room. Why Jason Mewes is a failed podcaster. I can't wait to see that.
Wait,
response.
you didn't see that one last week?
Oh, I didn't see it last week. There's probably been several of them.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I'm curious real quick to just kind of pick your brain, and I want to proceed with caution. I don't know what you're willing to reveal. There's no pressure to reveal anything you don't want to, but it seems like from the outside looking in, you've had experience with a very particular community on Clubhouse, and I was wondering if you wanted to share a little bit about how you interact with a particular community that you're a part of, and that I assume you have an affinity for.
Yes, you're talking about the lumberjacks, right?
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, sorry. No, I mean I've had experience actually with a couple different communities in Clubhouse. I've been on the app for about 2 years.
Okay.
For like the first, I would say, year and a half or so, I was in a lot of the spaces where for writers and authors, musicians, and then also spiritual rooms, like I was just talking about, things like that. Spent a lot of time on that side of the app. And of late, I think the group that you're talking about is what some people like to refer as Jewish Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And there is a really nice presence in Jewish community on Clubhouse. So we do have all kinds of rooms and clubs and get-togethers for the entire Clubhouse community. So that has been, the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months of my time spending time in that community, which I'm sure you're going to ask, why did I do that? And I'll just tell you without asking. I'll take over your podcast. Thank you very much. Just very quickly, though, I wound up seeking that out because of very extreme anti-Semitism that had taken over the app for a period of probably a month around the time when Kanye came out with his remarks. And
it was Whoopi first.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know if it was Whoopi first, and I don't consider Whoopi to be an anti-Semite personally. So that's a different issue for a different day, I guess, because we're going to talk about other things here. But when that all happened, especially with Kanye, people created rooms, and whether these people are doing it in good faith or just trolling, if you as a Jewish person using Clubhouse, we would scroll through the list of available rooms, and every other one would be some kind of Jew hating or anti-Semitic title. And for a while, it was very difficult and harassing to even come on, to the app and see these rooms. And that's what drew me to the Jewish community, to see are other people of my faith experiencing the same thing. And indeed, not only were they had already had a community and were dealing with the issues. And, so that's how I got over there and found other people that were going through similar things.
Yeah, I do think that there's probably similar stories that other members of other communities have had, kind of coalescing around kind of shared, what I want to say, a shared aversion to certain kinds of rooms or topics or subject matters that are discussed that implicate their community in ways that they don't approve of. I've heard similar stories with respect to the Black community on Clubhouse. I've heard similar stories with respect to a subset of the Black community, which is Black women, the LGBTQ plus community. So there are kind of similar experiences to that, where it's like, look, we're one of the impetuses for us forming a community is we're kind of bonding or joining together in our kind of mutual aversion to the toxicity with respect to us and how people talk about us in ignorance. So that's interesting how you can get kind of like a positive consequence from something that starts off negative. And that's part of the reason why I kind of prompted you to talk about that, because I felt like that was going to come out. For some reason, I'm told the Jewish community on Clubhouse kind of likes me a little bit. And I'm not Jewish, but it's just cool. It's just like, oh, okay. Like that's kind of a pleasant surprise. I've been told by several people, like, hey, you're welcome to like interact with us. We like your rooms. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. I don't know what your experience has been or what you've heard in the back channels of the Jewish community on Clubhouse, but
I would say everyone speaks very highly of you. People do enjoy your rooms, and I knew that really before even, like I said, finding my way over there. Your topics are very interesting. Your philosophy is very fair. Your sense of equity and fairness, civil rights. I appreciate all those things about you. I know it's not to say that in any way, at least from my understanding of being in your rooms, you're certainly not a bleeding heart liberal. I mean, you have your political views are unique and sometimes they're on the right. But when it comes to fairness, racial equity, discrimination, all those issues, no doubt, everything I've ever heard you say, you're always in the place advocating for the people, any person whose rights are being violated. So I think we appreciate that about you.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate those kind words. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I've had my moments where I've blown up on people in Clubhouse. I always regret it. That I think a lot of people don't know that about me. I always feel bad. Usually it's right around 15 minutes after the fact. It's like, damn it, I feel bad now. But in the moment, I don't be caring. But after the fact, I'm like, oh man, I cursed somebody out again. That's not cool.
Well, we all get triggered on these apps. I mean, that's part of it. I don't know if you want to talk about that now, but part of being on social audio, you get into these big debate rooms, and you have to learn over time, not to yell and scream at everyone and get triggered and get upset. So that happens to everyone when the argument gets emotional. Sure.
I've found over the couple of years or so on this app that I am more likely to get triggered or to blow up on somebody in a way that I don't approve of and I don't like if I haven't eaten before I've started a long ass room.
That's very true.
My patience is worn very thin really quickly.
That's true for most things, most important things in life that you need to do. You need to eat a little bit first.
Yeah, I get hangry.
That's right. That's right.
That's not cool. I can't be out here. It got to the point where it was actually a trend, and like something the joke became like every time I would blow up, it was like, "Hey, Jason, did you eat yet?" I'd be like, and then I'd be like, "Actually, no, I haven't eaten yet." They're like, "Bro, just take a pause, go get a sandwich or something, bro, because you screaming at people again." It's like that became the joke. But yeah, so okay, I do want to kind of awkwardly transition to the subject proper. We've kind of been talking around it a little bit. So the topic of this episode is actually the rise, and then I have in parentheses and fall, which is kind of controversial. We might debate that, of social audio. And the way I view social audio is that it's a kind of relatively novel manifestation, or I would say mode of engagement in the social media space. Social media is not new, but engaging in a way where via social media platforms, you can go in rooms and have conference calls with relative ease, where everybody can hear everybody on the internet is relatively novel, and it manifested itself in the form of Clubhouse, and the timing of it seemed to be great for Clubhouse and other platforms that ended up going into that space, because it was during the pandemic where a lot of people were, and this might be a little bit of hyperbole, but a lot of people were locked in their houses. Suddenly, a significant portion of the population was at home all the time. because of the shelter in place stuff and whatever. And a lot of people began to use or spend that time while they were at home, compliments of the government, interacting in a space where you get to have random conversations with random interesting people that you never otherwise would meet. And I discovered Clubhouse a little late, but when I did, it quickly became my new favorite toy. I mean, it became the mode of engagement I have always been searching for, because before I used to have these long ass posts on Facebook, and I would have these weird Facebook chat debates, and I would be really wordy, and I would have links proving shit, and I was like really like, and I actually am fairly well spoken, mostly because I spent a lot of my years doing public speaking because I'm a teacher. I also did debate when I was in high school. I did a lot of public speaking stuff when I was younger. So it's a mode of engagement that actually could serve me well in a space such as Clubhouse, where I can articulate my views pretty well. I can articulate pretty sophisticated sets of ideas pretty well. I don't know everything. Sometimes I just come off as really dumb and ignorant because I don't know everything. But I think for the most part, I'm pretty good with words. And so suddenly I was in a space where people started, like, there was an opportunity for me to kind of display that. And apparently I've impressed some people, for better or worse. And it's just like, oh, this kind of feels good to kind of like, get a little bit of affirmation for skill sets that I've been developing for years. And also all of the community stuff, all of the wonderful exchanges of ideas and conversations and opportunities to learn from other people. So that was my experience with Clubhouse. And that's why I was drawn to it. And Clubhouse has kind of become its own thing. But it has changed since the height of the pandemic. And now a lot of people have gone back to work. A lot of people are kind of sick of the toxicity. A lot of people, so kind of who have remained are the people who arguably are the most toxic and who don't have anything better to do with their lives. And I'm including myself in that.
Well, thank you very much for that compliment.
Well, that's the stereotype is my point. But like, that's my experience.
Yeah.
What has been your experience, and how would you characterize or describe Clubhouse to a person who's never experienced it before?
Okay. Before I answer that question, what you just said made me want to say one additional thing to one of your prior questions, which was, what do we like about you? And I just want to say this because it came to mind, and I would have said it before. When I initially met you and started coming to your rooms, what I enjoyed very much is the mindset you have coming from it as an educator. And I think you make that clear throughout your debates, that you're approaching it. Sure, everyone knows you're an educator, that you teach children in the real world. And you bring that kind of sense of you're here to educate. You're not really here to insult anyone or, hurt anyone's feelings or to be right necessarily, even though sometimes in your arguing, like you said, we all lose it sometimes. But on the main, you present an intention to educate, and even through debate, for yourself to learn and for everyone else in the room to learn. So I just wanted to say that was another thing that we appreciate, or I appreciate, about your rooms. To answer your question, what was my experience? Let's see. I came on Clubhouse initially. When I first published my book. So I was invited at that time you had to be invited to the platform, if you recall, in order to partake. So I got an invite from a writer's group, and I came on. I didn't know anything about it, but my intention was, let's see if I could maybe use the platform to launch or introduce my book, etc. And that was my intention when I came on. So like I said, I joined writer groups, book groups, reader groups. My book focuses on it's a work of fiction, but there's kind of some spiritual themes. So I joined those groups and would share the link to my book and different things, and it did work out. I got a bunch of I guess publicity regarding the book, from the platform, and that was good. And but then I started making friends and opened my first club, which is called the Alien Jazz Cafe. And in there, we play music. And then in between music, we would have chats on everything from do aliens exist to what is consciousness to, anything you can imagine. All kinds of the weirdest, most fun strange things that you could imagine talking about. And then, of course, attracted all the weirdos that like to talk about this stuff, like myself, and formed a nice club. And then we were doing it, every day and every night. And people might not realize who are listening to the podcast, but again, you have people from all around the globe. So what time of day it is really irrelevant, because the people in Europe are waking up and you're going to bed, or whatever it is. So you have to kind of be available at different times. And we'd have all-nighters and different things. And you make very close friends as you do this spend time with these people. And then I met a bunch of them in real life, which was wonderful, and made real friends who will definitely last well beyond the life of whatever life Clubhouse, God willing, has left in it. And so I went on, and that's, was my experience. And I wasn't in the politics and debating rooms really at all. I was in very kind of chill spaces where people were talking about literature, art, music, spirituality, that kind of stuff. And then, after about, I would say a year or so of really just concentrating on that, I started to use it and go into other rooms and encounter people like yourself in the debate rooms and the politics rooms, and started to enjoy that as well. The newsrooms, the international rooms, and, eventually got up to where we are now. So through that time in the beginning, there was less toxicity. It was during the pandemic, during lockdown. You really couldn't leave your home very much. People, again, were working from home. Everyone was home. So there was a great kind of enjoyment taken from finding people to hang out with, because suddenly you couldn't see your friends, you couldn't see your grandma, you couldn't go anywhere. And I spoke to a friend last night who told me she didn't see her parents because there were medical issues with someone being immunocompromised, and went like over a year without seeing her parents. And so things like this draw people to connections on the app, and it did serve that purpose for me as well.
So I have here that I'm sharing, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, an article I found earlier entitled something very similar to the title of the podcast episode, which is The Rise and Fall of Social Audio. Should you invest? And this article is basically informing people about whether, like, I guess the risks of investing in something if it's basically dying. And the reason why I kind of like want to launch into this real quick, in light of some of the like benefits that you were highlighting about your experience, is it does seem that those of us who still value places like Clubhouse or maybe Twitter Spaces or whatever other social audio platforms there are, we might have to come to terms with the fact that things have changed and it's not as popping as it once was during the height of the pandemic. And it leads to a bunch of interesting questions that are not clear right now, which is, well, what is the fate of so-called social audio? What is the fate of Clubhouse in particular? A lot of people have been singing the what is it called? The doom and gloom, the bell tolling of Clubhouse for over a year now. Clubhouse is dying. It's going to be dead. They're running out of money. All the doom and gloom. Clubhouse is still kind of alive and well, at least, or I should say alive. Maybe it's on life support, but it is an interesting question. And because I value it, and because it seems like you value it to some extent, I'm emotionally invested in seeing something like Clubhouse, which I particularly favor, continue and maybe evolve into something even more useful and valuable, if that's possible. What do you think about the idea that Clubhouse is so to speak, failing, or social audio in general is on its way out?
Okay. I look at them as two separate questions. So I don't think social audio is on its way out. I think social audio is only in its very beginning, infant stage. So I think we're on the beginning of that, and that's going to continue because it truly is an amazing thing. It sounds so trite now, but to just press a button and have a room open and have it populated with friends from literally every continent within several minutes is truly something that people in prior generations, would only imagine. And that we can't lose sight of that, even though it's so common now for us. It's really an amazing thing. So I don't see that going anywhere. I think that's going to not only continue, but become even more useful with features and other things that we don't have at the moment. Easier ways to initiate video, easier ways to exchange documents, information, or even conduct transactions. And also, these platforms have been used professionally by businesses and professionals to provide services, to have conferences, to give information. So I don't see social audio going anywhere. I think that in general, it's, this is an investment advice, of course, and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but I would say in general, that would be a good investment if you find the right company to invest in. Now, to the other part of the question is Clubhouse. Here's the thing on Clubhouse, Jason, as you know, when a new user signs up, they get a little icon on their profile called a party hat, right? And it lasts for their first 2 weeks, so that when you're an established user, you can see if someone's a brand new user, and okay, well, they might not know how this app works yet, or they're just getting used to it, etc. And it used to be that in any given room, a good percentage of the room had party hats, meaning they were new users. So they had just downloaded and logged into the program within the last 2 weeks for the first time. And I'll ask you, have you seen any party hats lately in your rooms?
I haven't.
And I haven't either.
I haven't seen too many, yeah.
Which means there aren't, at least from our perspectives as users, there aren't a lot of new users. There aren't as many people coming on and creating new accounts. So, and also, as you said, the height of Clubhouse so far was during the pandemic, when everyone had a very good reason to, be on a social audio app. So there has been seemingly a decrease in use of this particular app, but I think that even though they've had a decrease in use, they've continued to build features and make it a better app. And as of their last update, they've added the features of houses, which is in addition to clubs, and a couple other things. So I think they're doing a really good job with the app as well as they could. I think when you compare this app, Clubhouse, to apps like Twitter Spaces and others, I think it's much better right now because, for instance, in Clubhouse, you can have 1,000 people on one stage, each with the ability to speak. On Twitter Spaces, you can have 1,000 people in the room, but I think you're only allowed, I think it's 12. You're only allowed to have 12 up on stage at once. However, of course, Twitter Spaces has many millions more active users than Clubhouse, but in some way that means it's less intimate. You go there to hear these kind of very important conversations with just a few select experts on the stage, and you understand you're there to listen. But Clubhouse, you're truly there to participate. And I feel that sets it apart. So I hope that they are not going to die. I really hope that Clubhouse continues, and perhaps it will be acquired or merge in with some other entity. But I don't think that it's going to die completely. I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, fair enough. I actually want to submit some things to you. This article is actually, it's a new article, is actually from, when is this from? From June 6th of 2022. So not quite a year old. It'll be a year old in about 4 months or so. It's entitled, it's by The Hustle. That's the source. It's titled, "Is Social Audio Already Dead?" Remember, this was written in June 6, 2022, so last summer. Clubhouse had a rough year, and it doesn't bode well for the future of social audio. In early 2021, Clubhouse, let me make this bigger so that my viewers can read it. In early 2021, Clubhouse was on top of the world, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg were dropping into social audio app to share their wisdom. Invites to the app were going for $400 on eBay at one point. But what a difference a year makes. These days, Clubhouse is losing users and key execs, leading critics to argue that social audio was merely a pandemic fad per protocol. Clubhouse. It generated 19 million installs between January 1st and May 31st, 2021. Its rapid growth fueled a rush of copycat products from tech's biggest players. Twitter launched Twitter Spaces. Meta launched live audio rooms. Spotify acquired Locker Room, and eventually that evolved to Spotify Live. We get this. We know this. But in the same stretch this year, Clubhouse installs were down 80% to 3.8 million. Its competitors aren't thriving either. Twitter is shifting resources away from Spaces, and Facebook folded live audio rooms into its live video product. Perhaps more importantly, key Clubhouse leaders are leaving the company. One departing exec is, I don't know how to say his name, Arthai Ramamurthy. I hope I said that right. Former head of international and co-host of The Good Time Show, an early success story on the platform. In a move that doesn't exactly ring as a vote of confidence, Ramamurthy and her husband and co-host, a 16Z partner, Shriyam Krishan, recently moved their show from Clubhouse to YouTube. So what's next? And this is the last paragraph I'm going to read. Social audio's popularity may be waning, but it's not dead yet. Specifically, it seems like its future may lie in connecting niche audiences. Twitter recently started Super Follow Spaces, which are exclusive to a creator's paid subscribers. Discord, a to-go platform for niche communities, has its own social audio feature called Stage Channels. Where Clubhouse fits into the future of social audio is anyone's guess. In March 2021, Anna Wiener wrote an article for The New Yorker entitled "Clubhouse Feels Like a Party." Going forward, the party might just be a little smaller. So there is some sentiment in this article in the same vein as what you were talking about. But there is this kind of like, I don't know, pessimism that is dripping from pointing out all of the kinds of usual metrics of success, many of which Clubhouse was boasting early on, how they've dwindled. And to a certain extent, they've dwindled even more since this article was written. So it actually is pretty plausible that social audio will kind of die a slow death, not necessarily become non-existent, but just become relegated to the kind of thing that not very many people have anymore. It might go the way of beepers from the 90s. I'm sure you might be able to find a couple people who have them, if only as collector's items. But like, people don't use beepers anymore because we've moved on to other things. And so like social audio kind of might be that. What do you say to something like that?
I would disagree with that. I don't think that it's going the way of beepers or pagers. I think that Clubhouse, they may have, in particular as a company, may have made some difficult business decisions or mistakes. And also they grew so fast, almost instantaneously during the pandemic into, such a large user base. So then a year later, of course, they're going to get criticism in the press when you can't sustain that initial growth, that growth rate. But it may not be about, are you able to sustain that particular growth rate from the pandemic, your startup growth rate? It may be about, more of a long and slow ride of slowly now just doing what they do, because they do it well. It is the best social audio app in terms of features, ease of use, and the people who are attracted to it are the ones who want to participate in the conversation and not just listen. And so I think that also is important. If they made a sufficient number of mistakes with the startup funding that they received, and they are unable to generate revenue sufficient to cover the cost of running their business, then like any business, they will fail or be purchased by another company. But can you hear me, Jason?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, there was an issue with my screen. So those are particular business issues that, with regard to Clubhouse, and financial issues, which we're not really privy to all the information because it's not a publicly traded company. So if it fails, I would venture to say that it's going to be related to those business and finance issues, and it's not necessarily a judgment on whether social audio as a concept will continue on into the future.
I was being provocative with my statement that it might go the way of beepers. It's actually not a good comparison at all. But I think you got the idea. It might be a lot more accurate to say it might go the way of MySpace, which I think still exists in some form, but definitely not as popularly used as it once was in its heyday. Um, so social audio apps generally and Clubhouse specifically might go the way of that, where it just becomes relegated to this kind of niche thing that some people want, but it loses its luster, it loses its appeal, it loses its popularity, and people move on to other things. And in that sense, it may die. What do you think about something like that?
I think that's a possibility. I just see Clubhouse itself again as a company. Yes, I hope they don't die. But again, these things are determined by it's a simple business and finance question. Do you have enough money to cover your costs? Did you get a return for your investors who gave you millions of dollars? If you did, then they'll give you more money. If you didn't, then you're not running a business that's profitable. So it's really, that's a business question. There are many examples of businesses that opened and were the first ones and then shuttered, and another company came along and did the same thing but didn't shutter. So we don't know enough about Clubhouse. I don't know. But one thing that came to mind is what kind of it may be something that dies in terms of it being a separate platform where if you want to use social audio, you have to go to a specific app. It may be the kind of thing where they take these features and it just becomes a sub feature of every other app or every other website, every other communication when you're on the internet. Essentially, at some point, maybe 20 years from now, whenever it is, we'll have a feature where you can just go ahead and log into or press a button, take you into a room right there. And that's talking about whatever it is you're looking at your screen. It should become more of a standardized feature throughout the web, I think, throughout the internet.
Well, what would that do for the ability to build communities, though? I mean, one of the things that made Clubhouse valuable at one point is that everybody seemed to be on it, and there seemed to be a kind of unique opportunity for a niche kind of community. I think every social media platform cultivates a kind of community broadly. Of interactions, and a part of what defines the parameters of that community are the modes of engagement that the platforms allow. Sure. And so part of what I think made Clubhouse all the rage was its particular mode of engagement enabled some pretty incredible people to facilitate conversations, presentations, displays of talent, discussions, debates, etc., that were in some sense novel. Other social media platforms didn't really enable those modes of engagement, and it kind of and it maximized the opportunity for almost anyone, even modest, mediocre people like me, to in some sense thrive in that space. And I mean that very sincerely.
Sure.
And this is not me fishing for compliments. I genuinely don't take myself to be all of that extraordinary, relative to somebody who's really way more notable, like a Joe Rogan or something like that. I'm doing this podcast thing as a very as an amateur. I do it because it's fun. It's a creative outlet for me, and I like having conversations with interesting people like you. I'm no Joe Rogan, but I think Joe Rogan in some sense is extraordinary because he was able to take this podcast thing to a whole nother level, and he's had great success. So that's just one example. But like you imagine like a regular person like me now has the ability to facilitate conversations with people half the world away, and nobody would suspect that little old me would even be valuable in that space. I didn't even suspect that I would be, but because of the opportunity that I took advantage of, suddenly I found like, oh, I have some talent for this. I'm no Joe Rogan, but like there's something here, and it's like enjoyable. And to whatever extent people benefit anything, there's any benefits from my rooms or interacting with me or whatever, like that's something that I get to participate in, and it feels good because I'm fairly mediocre. And I know that people look at mediocrity as like a pejorative. They're saying you're not special or you're lame or whatever. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is like my social status is not extraordinary. And that's just an objective fact. Now, we can argue about whether or not I have some kind of special features or a combination of talents or whatever, and it's just that people don't know about them. Okay, but like the main point I'm making is a regular Joe Schmo, such as myself or whoever you want to use as a canonical example of that, has the ability to engage in ways that can be fulfilling because of the way that that Clubhouse specifically was designed. And like I feel like that is underestimated, the value of that. I know a lot of people don't like that. They scoff at that because they feel like, you know, mediocrity is in some sense bad. You don't want to platform mediocrity. What you want to do is you want to save that for the talented people. And I don't know if philosophically I'm on board with that all the way. What do you think about that?
Okay. I don't think, first of all, mediocrity, that does not apply to you or what you're doing, but I understand being humble, about yourself and using those words. You do have a talent, obviously. But yes, Clubhouse is a great social media and the internet in general, whether you're talking about social audio or just the ability to publish a website or blog to thousands or millions of people without leaving your home, etc., is a great equalizer. It allows people to do things that previously could not be done. If you wanted to find an audience of 1,000 people, you'd have to go to a stadium and stand outside while everyone is walking in and hold up your sign and stand on your soapbox and say what you had to say, or go to the town square and stand there all day with your, that's what you would literally have to do to reach 1,000 people. And now mediocre people like me and you, but not you, but can just literally press a button and find people to speak with. And if we have a message, we could deliver our message, or if we're just looking to enjoy, we can enjoy. So yes, there's an equalizing aspect. There's an equity aspect, which is interesting in terms of, we talk a lot about civil rights, you and I, and that is interesting. There will be discussions in the future about access, and do our disadvantaged communities able to participate in these things in an equal way, because the technology is required, and not everyone has the budget for headphones and great smartphones and supercomputers that let us do all this stuff. And certainly there are communities even to this day where internet access is a problem, and tech. So it is an equalizer, but like everything else, it depends on the access point and where people are coming from. But the question about also, should mediocrity not be platformed, and should only the greatest talent be platformed? No, I think that all talent and non-talent should have a chance. It's by audience. So if you get on there and nobody likes what you're saying, they leave your room, or they don't join your club, and you realize by market forces that you have no followers and no one likes your, what you're saying, and it's over. But it didn't hurt anyone. You got to try, and you got to learn that lesson, right?
Well, what if it does hurt someone? What if we platform the wrong people? I mean, this is actually a point of contention on Facebook, on the Clubhouse.
This is really an important topic. This is free speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. All these things are very important. But we do have to figure out what are the boundaries and borders between, because again, in America at least, because we're talking to a global audience, freedom of speech is embedded within our Constitution, but people often don't realize that it essentially applies to the government. The government cannot regulate or minimize your speech, but a private party like Clubhouse certainly can. They can make rules that you have to follow, and whereas the government might not be able to make those rules. So freedom of speech is very important. It's a very important value, but when it comes to a private entity, like a social media company, the same protections that would be afforded against the government do not apply. So private companies have the right and should make rules surrounding safety, non-discrimination, and all of these things. And so what happens on Clubhouse, to get directly to your question, is yes, there are, for instance, white supremacy rooms, and we've seen KKK rooms, and
there have been KKK rooms on Clubhouse.
there absolutely have.
Who's in them?
I don't know. I mean, these people don't form real screen names. I'm not saying that it happens every day, but in the 2 years I've been here, yes, that I've seen KKK rooms on several occasions. And then, of course, there are debates around, should we allow hate speech and people that are platforming anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, discrimination against African Americans or persons of color. Do we want to platform them? Should they be allowed to open clubs and have other hateful people assemble while we're in a room next door, doing an open mic night and playing in the Alien Jazz Cafe? Should we let a white supremacy room also go on in that same hallway? And these are really important questions. I don't really know all the answers. There should, when you sign up for an app, right, you agree to the terms and conditions. And if you read in this particular company, but it's pretty standard across the industry, if you read them, it will tell you we don't allow hate speech, no discrimination, right? No hurtful words, no threats, all these different things. But in reality, there's hate speech all the time. And it's very difficult for Clubhouse to control that, because these are conversations that are being had. So it's reliant upon someone in the room who's hearing it, reporting that speaker to the company as a violation of the terms and service. And we do that. If we see the kind of room that we're talking about, people will go in and file a mass report, or report the speaker, report the room.
Yeah.
But then it's on the social media company to do something about that. And whether, like, some have it in real time where you make a report and they have a whole team of people and they'll look at the room, and if it's truly against their terms of service, they'll shut it down. Other companies don't have the staff to do that. I think Clubhouse is one of them, as you read in that article. And so we've had an experience, at least with like some extreme anti-Semitism on the app, people opening room after room, with things like, calling for the death of Jews and different things like this in the title. And we've reported it time and time again. And unfortunately, most of the time, nothing happens. It's like filing a report into a big trash bin. But every now and then they'll take a room down or clip someone's account, cancel somebody, for making hateful remarks or threats. Also, this relates not just to discrimination, but harassment, sexual harassment, all the kind of things that happen when people talk to each other.
Right.
And so threats, anything. We've heard anything and everything on Clubhouse. So it is definitely a very important issue. And I'm sure the folks at Clubhouse are struggling to figure out, how to best manage that.
Well, do you think that their inability to manage the content moderation task has driven people away? Because I've heard a narrative like that before.
I would say yes, not in huge numbers, but they're
particularly quote unquote the talented or notable people, the celebrity types, the people who are especially gifted at doing phenomenal rooms, who used to be on Clubhouse, who no longer are on Clubhouse, who used to draw a lot of attention to rooms.
I don't think that hate speech is the reason that some of those celebrities no longer come on Clubhouse. I think hate speech,
or toxicity more broadly, and hate speech would just be a facet of the toxicity.
Okay. I just want to say, I think toxicity and hate speech may be a reason for, let's say, like, I would say 5 to 10% of people in general not coming back to the platform after encountering that. then the rest of them, are there for, a lot of times people are there for entertainment and drama, and they actually want to go in those hate rooms just to kind of have this, forbidden fruit of listening to people arguing and insulting each other and, hurting each other's feelings.
But to my mind, the systemic effect of that is that it maximizes the toxicity.
It does. I'm not sure why the celebrities specifically don't come on as much as they did. I believe it's related to, that was the height of the pandemic. Again, everyone was locked down in their homes, and this was their outlet where they could still communicate with their fans and have big rooms and come and talk. And as we got away from that, the real world, came back, and
It came crashing back.
Exactly. And those people are now doing the other things that they were doing before this. Yeah.
So they're back to their real lives. Well, what about the narrative that Clubhouse kind of caters to the mediocre people, the quote unquote losers in life who don't have anything better to do? Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think it's to the contrary, that we are, as users, we are in constant search of content, and to listen to and to participate in at the same time. And we're only growing intellectually. As long as the platform stays open and there's a reasonable number of people, there will continue to be rooms on every topic. When heaven forbid, when there are things like wars and attacks in different countries, and you'll have a room that might go on for 5 days with people in that country reporting what's going on, and then people from around the world gathering to support them and to learn and have the shared experience. And I think that kind of thing is going to continue.
There was this one guy named Piotr who opened up a room for 90 plus days about the Ukraine thing, Ukraine and Russia. And that was a kind of interesting, unique manifestation of the Clubhouse community. One room that stayed open for that long, and it was a lot of people reported it was very informative to get kind of a daily update, and a lot of people who were kind of in Ukraine or in Russia or thereabouts, who had kind of more insider knowledge of what was going on, got to kind of share and report. And it's a fascinating exemplar of what Clubhouse can be when it's at its best. What do you think about that example?
Excuse me. Yes, I was in that room. It was a great room. It was called Site Situation Report, or Site Rep, and it went on for, like you said, for days. As the Ukraine war was beginning and developing, Piotr, who is a global affairs expert, gave us the geopolitical rundown. But most importantly, he had a panel of people that were in the Ukraine and experiencing, the unfortunate things that come with war. And we were there hearing it all live and interacting with them. Many of them were, in their basement or in a shelter, a bomb shelter, or some place where they had fled. Sometimes they were in the process of fleeing, yet on their cell phone and describing what they were doing, how they were trying to get out or where they were going. Yes. I mean, that was truly, it was very unfortunate because it involves war, but it was truly, if anything about it can be positive, it was positive in terms of being able to learn and be there with them and try to provide some form of support. I want to note one more thing about this. There's actually a gentleman who's in my room right now where we're streaming this podcast, Guy Frankel.
Mm-hmm.
Well before the Ukraine room, he had created a room, I don't know if you remember this, for Israelis and Palestinians to come up and talk.
Right.
And that room went on for, I believe, over a week. If someone can back channel me how long it went on for. It went on for a very long time.
Right.
And there were, I don't want to exaggerate the numbers, but I know hundreds of thousands. It might have been over 1 million, I'm not sure, of people who came in and out of that room. And so that was one of the first kind of very long, big international rooms, besides the fact that you actually had people from two sides of a geopolitical conflict speaking to each other and then doing so with moderation, with the goal to find understanding. What an amazing thing! What an accomplishment by the people who created that room, and also, by everyone who participated in it. So that's an example, and also Piotr's room are examples of how this kind of platform can be used for good and for understanding.
Yeah, so there's a lot of wonderful opportunities for it to be used for kind of benevolent, positive purposes, and obviously there's a lot of risks and ways that it can be exploited for more malevolent and negative purposes. But I think that's kind of the nature of social media in general. Or any tool that is created, like if you want to create a ridiculously awesome knife that's really really good in enabling you as a chef to like dice your vegetables and like chop your proteins and things like that, that same knife can be used to like murder people, right? So it's
Yeah,
kind of a double-edged sword, no pun intended. And like I think social media has always been that double-edged sword, because the ways with which you interact with people can be positive and they can be negative. And so if you're going to facilitate social interaction, then you're enabling either one of those things. um
absolutely.
and
And
so go ahead.
that made me think that it bears on the user actually to consider their own behavior and to train themselves, because again, we come on and it's very easy to get animated and upset or triggered or angry and have discussions that are less than productive. And when you've been on a platform like this for a while, then you start to recognize the symptoms in yourself. And so it's important to take a break. It's important to take some deep breaths. Remember, you're just having a conversation. We forget these things in the moment, but we all have to take breaks to close the room, walk around the block, come back, get back on your phone. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's really not worth, and we've all done it, but it's not worth getting explosively triggered and screaming at people and going back and forth. You can always just leave the room, take a break, like I said, get some fresh air and come back. So a lot of that is in the user's hand. That's what I think.
But there's a lot that's not in the user's hands. So what part of what we're discussing is the kind of business side of Clubhouse in particular, and to what extent the inability to kind of keep the lights on, if I could put it that way, or pay for things, is going to negatively impact the further existence of the platform itself. And that to a certain extent, that aspect of things is out of our control, right? Like how the development of new features or the tweaking of features that already exist is out of our hands. How content moderation is conducted is out of our hands. What kinds of features, the extent to which certain features enable people to monetize or maximize their following, which is one of the biggest incentives or drivers for social media engagement in general, is out of our hands. And these things all have impacts, for better or worse, on our experience on the app. Part of what I'm concerned about is not only the app disappearing, because I've been very transparent about it. I'm emotionally attached to Clubhouse and the community that they're in. I It's my new favorite toy. It's my preferred mode of engagement for social media or interaction or social networking interactions, because I love having conversations, and facilitating them is one facet of that. I would be in some sense distraught emotionally if Clubhouse suddenly disappeared, or if it became so unpopularly used that the value of maximizing the Clubhouse community was diminished in some way. There's not all of the people that I'm normally used to seeing are no longer on the app anymore. I can think of some people right now who don't come on the app anymore who I loved engaging with, and I feel like the app is worse off because they're not there. That's a personal example, and I won't name names because I'm not trying to expose anybody, but like I feel that way. Some people have expressed that they felt that way about me when I disappeared for a while, that they didn't know what happened to me. They thought I was maybe one of the fallen ones that just disappeared for good, and they were happy to see me back when I came back on. That maybe I'm an example of that for some people, but there's probably way better examples of that for people generally. But like I think the point is still easy to understand. It's like there's a value in maximizing the people on there, particularly if the people are especially gifted at what Clubhouse enables, all the positive stuff. And so I don't know, like, what do you think about the relationship between the kind of business side of Clubhouse and the impact it has on the user's experience, um, generally, and also the impact that it has on uh, either the maximization or the dwindling of the community itself?
Okay. And then I just to preface that, even with all the various features that impact our user experience over which we have no control, but the one thing that we can always control is just to leave the room. So again, so much of it really is in the user's hand. If you don't like a room, if you don't like the discussion, it's a voluntary choice to enter that room or to leave it. And that's it seems very basic and obvious, but it's a really important fact to remember, because you do get kind of emotionally attached and stuck in these rooms, but you can always walk away. But yeah, if it's a negative or a toxic room. With regard to the business question, I mean, my understanding, I don't know much about their business and revenue, or if they have an actual revenue source besides startup funding, which was given to them by investors. I've heard and read, I don't know if it's true, that they do get revenue from providing the transcripts of the conversations to companies that parse them for data mining purposes. I'm not saying that they don't identify specific individuals and data mine as to individuals' details, but they may data mine for trends, for determining what may be good for advertising, or what people are talking about, what's the most important. So I don't know if they're actually receiving revenue from that, but I've heard that they do that in an anonymized way. That there's an interest in the metadata of the conversations themselves. Okay, so that could be a revenue source for them. I don't know, and I don't know if that would be sufficient once their startup funding is over, which was very significant amount of money that they received. I don't know if that will be sufficient to cover their costs, or if they would get a new round of funding. I don't know those things. But yes, as a company, if their financial revenue begins to dwindle to an extent that it has a material impact on operations, then yes, that will also ultimately trickle down to the users. And that's when platforms start to die, So I don't think we're there yet with Clubhouse. I think it's still an open book. They definitely have an amazing product with amazing features, and they have an amazing community. They have to figure out how to monetize it. And I don't know enough about their company to comment on that.
Do you think that if Clubhouse were to successfully be monetized, that would actually have a undermining or detrimental effect to everything that we currently find valuable, or some of the things we currently find valuable with Clubhouse?
Yes, of course, and we've seen that in other platforms. Once monetization comes in, it's all about eyeballs and how many views and things like that, and some of the organic, more natural but maybe less popular rooms will be lowered in the algorithm in terms of their value. Yes.
That I've been kind of concerned about that for the longest time, because I think it's actually extremely difficult to preserve some of the aspects of Clubhouse that are I think enduring or endearing is what I mean to say. The organic interactions, when there's all of these economic incentives to maximize engagement, clicks, likes, subs, things like that. Those things have an undermining effect on the building of genuine community. And I think it would suck for Clubhouse to go the way of Twitter.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe one answer is, I don't know if Clubhouse will do this, probably not, but maybe eventually there will be some open source nonprofit version where it's, the people running it are running it for the intention to build a healthy platform without regard to eyeballs and ad revenue. and then it will be more like a feature without regard to money. But I don't know if that can happen. There are some examples of that in the real world.
Well, what are some examples?
Um, for instance, there are several newspapers that were going bankrupt and were purchased by groups that were essentially set up as nonprofits,
Right.
so that they can worry less about advertising and more about continuing to run as a newspaper. And I can think of a few others, but companies that are providing some social good, which initially start out as for profit, and then it becomes realized in the industry this needs to be more of a neutral platform, so people get together and create an open source nonprofit version. You can look at Linux as an operating system, right? Versus Mac or Windows. Mac, Windows, you need to go to the store or download and purchase that, invest a significant amount of money in your software, and then you're locked into a ecosystem, of compatibility with that operating system. Linux, I don't know if you've ever done it, but you can download it for free. It's amazing. You can set it up on your computer. It does everything Mac does. It's run by a foundation. It's a nonprofit entity. They do it because they want there to be a free open source version of an operating system available to the world. And so that's an example. So perhaps something like Clubhouse there could be an open source version of it one day.
An open source version of Clubhouse?
Yeah.
Why would that be any more valuable?
Because it wouldn't be dependent. The danger that you're citing is as it becomes more dependent on things like revenue, eyeballs, advertising features, that takes away the genuineness of the conversations. So having it open source and nonprofit would remove that as a barrier. There would be no impetus to merely do things for eyeballs or revenue.
So I got somebody in the chat basically signaling that they want to participate. So I'm going to take advantage of that. So we have CRB Vegas that's basically saying that Clubhouse can't monetize. I asked why not. CRB Vegas then said this: not enough value that any feature could provide. It does what people need it to do. They would have to take things away and then charge you for it. That won't work for people. To which I responded, actually, what they could do is they could add new features that are long overdue and that people have wanted anyway. Basically, create a souped up version of Clubhouse and charge for that. That's a great way to create value. They don't have to strip anything away, because the state of Clubhouse right now has a kind of built-in intrinsic obsolescence anyway. It took forever for us to get a back channel and shit. I remember the days of Clubhouse before the back channel, before the chat, before the ability to pin links at the top of the room. Expansions of features and enabling people to share documents more easily, enabling people to maybe share GIFs or photos in certain rooms, enhancing certain mod features, being able to clear a stage with one button is a feature that I was discussing with somebody in a back channel yesterday.
I think
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Being able to lock people's mute buttons. Like, I want y'all to mute permanently for like at least 5 minutes or whatever. I would like a timer feature where I can time people's speaking time and it'd be visible in the room. I would like a debate format feature where I can put people on teams or sides and it's visible, like they would separate on the screen and you could see this side or this side. PTRs grouped in there. I would like a voting feature or a polling feature where you can have people integrated into Clubhouse vote for this or that thing. It would be very useful for after a debate to have people vote for who they think won. But you can poll people throughout a room, and it would be another facet of participation for people who just like to chill in the audience. They can do a poll.
Sure.
Etc. There's so many more features. I literally made a list of features that I would love to see. And if you added all of these features as premium features and then charge people monthly for it, I think a lot of people would love it because a lot of these features they wanted anyway. Now, a lot of people probably be annoyed because a lot of these features are like they should have been on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
If you charge me a certain amount a month just because you added a back channel, I'd be annoyed. But you can create value by adding a lot of these features. And I think that they could monetize in that way. What do you think about the prospects? And CRB Vegas, what do you think about any of that? You can go first, Ben.
Okay, I think it's dangerous when you want to start charging users to use the app. In my opinion, I think a lot of people don't want to pay to use it. If you told me, I mean, I would probably say okay if it was like if I had to set up $5 a month or $10, maybe $10 a month, and have it come off my Apple Pay or whatever through my phone. I would probably pay that to maybe. If they had no other choice and they were going to shut down, if we didn't all pay $10 a month, I might do that. But you lose a lot of users for the people that don't want to have yet another app in their app store that's taking yet another subscription every month. So that's a problem. I don't know. I don't think respectfully, I don't think charging users is going to be the answer. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm not aware. Like, again, Elon Musk and different things wanted to charge people to use Twitter. And I'm not really aware of any social media app where people are actually paying. Nobody pays to use Facebook. Nobody pays to use Twitter. Nobody pays to use TikTok, Snapchat. There are things you can purchase in app, but nobody really pays a subscription to use these things.
If the features are valuable enough, I think you could get people to pay for them. And if you had a free version and a paid version so that all of your users who don't want to pay for it can still access basic features, same as they always were. But the people who are willing to pay for it can do more stuff. And you would have to be really clever about what the non-paid people could access, right? So, like, for example, if I was able to pay, and then my paying enabled me to create certain kinds of rooms that people who are not willing to pay can't create, but they got to go to those rooms and experience that enhanced experience, it would make the app generally better. You would still be able to collect revenue from the people who are willing to pay to be able to facilitate rooms in the most souped up way possible. And there's some kind of trickle down effect in terms of enhancing the experience on Clubhouse, or whatever social audio app we're talking about. I think that in theory it could work. I do think that people are primed in such a way as to not be willing to pay for social media because it's not normal to do so. So maybe there is some kind of a controversy here, but I think that if the features are valuable enough, it would probably compel or convince some people to pay for it. And particularly, and then also there's how much am I paying?
Yeah,
exactly.
And if Clubhouse had a user base that was growing, and it was like Twitter has a huge user base, Twitter Spaces, even though it has limitations on the format of having people on the stage, but it has way more users. Then if Clubhouse had, hundreds of millions of users and it was just this active beehive of people in rooms, I might pay for that. But like I told you, I have not seen I saw one party hat probably in the last 2 weeks, meaning one new user who just downloaded the app and came into one of our rooms. I don't see a user base that justifies, payment yet. If they had the user base they had at the height of the pandemic, that would justify some payment, but it's not there right now.
Dude, I just think that Clubhouse, so you would have to be able to get the coders necessary to actually create these features and maintain them and run them in a way that would actually not be glitchy and stuff. And so maybe there's some limitations there, but I know that a lot of the features that I have in mind, and I literally have a ridiculously long list of features that I have in mind that would make Clubhouse better, are possible. They can be done. They can be coded. If you had the right team, you could create a lot of value on Clubhouse. And then also the marketing strategy or the promotion strategy of these new features and onboarding people into these new features is also a big part of the success story, potentially, or the failure story. Even when you add new features, you want to add features that are intuitive, that the learning curve is really, really slight for people. It doesn't differ from what they are, their normal range of experience, too much. You want to have lots of tutorials that are easily accessible, maybe instructional videos or things like that that people can easily access, or that when they log on, it would prompt them every time, like automatically, so that they know what's new. And then on Clubhouse, you could actually facilitate rooms that are designed to give people tutorials. Clubhouse was doing that for the longest time. They used to have all these rooms about these new features, and they would highlight them. You can also have incentive-based programs where it's like, hey, here's a new type of room you can do. Clubhouse introducing game rooms.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of features now that enable you to facilitate various forms of games.
As if I'm your investor and that's your pitch, I'm not writing a check, because I'm saying those are all great ideas and great features, but where are the user? Where's your user base? How many new users are downloading your app? How many people are actually interested? And for some reason, I could be wrong, but I'm not seeing any. There should be a constant influx of new users of party hats. And
but my rebuttal is, if you build it, they will come. The part of the draw.
And I'll say you built it and they didn't come. You built it.
Well, no, but you didn't. But you built a shitty fucking platform. I'm saying, if you built a fucking mega fucking platform with all the kind of additional features that I'm trying to describe, it's going to attract new users. That's the purpose of it, particularly if you promote it and if you incentivize it in various different ways. So one way to incentivize a new feature is have some kind of prize for people who use the new feature in the most creative way, some kind of competition. $10,000 to the most creative creator, some kind of competition like that. That would draw a lot of people. That would all of a sudden that would monetize. That would be a monetary incentive for creativity. If you incentivize people getting new users to the platform, that's another one. Like $5,000, $10,000. Who has drawn the most new users in a given time period? Right now, you got people who are hella motivated to actually do the things you want them to do. Right? These are just ideas, right?
No, yeah.
Like, these are not bad ideas. And if you're only willing to write the check when I get the users, then I would prioritize my features in such a way as to attract users, maximize users, so then I can go show you, hey, these new features that we're coming up with, we are maximizing users. So write that check so we can do more features, so we can get more users.
I might, if you had a few of the best ideas, I might say, okay, well, I'll fund one of them on a preliminary basis, and if you show me more party hats are coming in, then I'll continue to go. But I'm not buying it, because we've been on it for 2 years and there are just no party hats. It's what's happening. So maybe it is that there's not a market for it. There aren't enough people interested in actually doing this. Maybe it's just us geeks, nerds, and whatever you want to call us that are actually.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I talk to too many people on Clubhouse who want features. They want new features. They want very specific.
Right, but they're already users. I'm talking about the ones who aren't on Clubhouse. Maybe they're just not interested in doing this. They'd rather go to the baseball field and spend the day, outside.
Fair enough. You're going to have people who are not interested in Clubhouse. But what I'm saying is the idea that it's impossible to add certain kinds of feature sets that would attract people who are already engaging in certain ways on social media anyway to Clubhouse is what I'm refuting. I don't think that that's true. People came to this app hungry for a certain kind of thing, and they didn't really get it.
You're saying
they left.
They could reattract all the people that have gone over to Twitter Spaces and are still using social audio in other spaces, and get them to come back because they now have these amazing features,
or attract new users who've never used any of this shit before, because there's certain kinds of modes of engagement that are not currently available on Clubhouse that these new features that I have in mind would enable.
Yeah, I think there's a chance of that being a thing. I just would say I'm very I don't know. I'm a little bit pessimistic just because I've experienced almost the entire life of Clubhouse. And here we are at this low point, even though they've tried so hard and have added some wonderful features and made it a great app. I don't think it's a shitty app at all. people do make fun of it. I think for the time they've been in business, what they've built is quite remarkable. But it's very unfortunate. There's an issue with what is the market for this and why aren't new users signing up? And I don't think it's just because you can't easily share a document in the platform. You know, there's something that there's an issue about understanding
that's
the
a
market.
weak feature. I'm not talking about. That was just
No, I'm just.
I'd have to read off my list of features, dude.
No,
Like
we don't have to
I'm
do
talking
that.
about like groundbreaking shit that Clubhouse has never done. I'm not just talking about sharing Google Docs and shit. I'm talking about like enabling people to like stream things in a room so you can have a watch party.
Wait,
An
which you can
incredible
do
feature.
now, like through Club Deck, which is a separate app. But yes, that could be.
You can stream video.
Not
Club
video.
Deck?
Actually, you
That's
can.
what I'm talking about,
You
video.
can. Yes, you can.
So
stream
what
video.
I mean is it be integrated into Clubhouse.
Right.
Also, Clubhouse should have a fucking like laptop computer based app too, integrated into Clubhouse.
Okay,
You don't need a third party.
Here's the thing: especially during the pandemic, as you know, there were several other apps that one of them was called Lobby. I don't know if you ever used Lobby, but Lobby is just like Clubhouse, except instead of your PTR, you actually have a square and you see the video of each person in the room, and they can turn their camera on and off. And so it's the same thing, but with the video and other things. But it didn't go. Nothing happened. Like even when during the pandemic we were doing the big music rooms, and then we all downloaded Lobby in my club, and then we were using that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But no one else was using it. It was just like, oh, this is cool. This is really awesome. I feel like I'm in the future, but the rest of the world, just nobody bought onto it. Nobody. So there's an issue.
Yeah, but Clubhouse has maintained users in a way that app that platform didn't. And so like if you integrated that feature into Clubhouse, I think it would go further.
Yeah, it might. I don't know. I'm not. I don't mean to sound completely negative or pessimistic, but I don't think the answer is just no. It somehow the idea that adding more features is going to attract the number of users to something that's already like the prime example of what this social audio is Clubhouse.
It's not just a random adding of features. You're going to add you got to be intentional about the features, but you're adding features in such a way as to enhance the user's experience on Clubhouse. It's the enhancement of the user's experience that incentivizes them to continue to either maximize the engagement they're already doing, or incentivize new users who are willing to engage in these new ways. Because word of mouth is going to be valuable. Motherfuckers on Clubhouse know people who are not on Clubhouse.
True.
Right. That's one of the reasons why
you talk about like $10,000 for the best new creator or whatever it is. But yeah, you might get 100,000 people to sign up and download the app just to participate in that one thing. But are they going to stay on and become members of the ongoing community on a daily basis?
So you maximize the likelihood that they will if you enhance the experience that they get when they get here. That's the point.
Sure. But even when maximized, and even with the greatest of features that you could possibly come up with during a non-pandemic time, what I think the answer is, I think that actually they're a little bit early. And in the future, actually, and I don't know, it might be too late for Clubhouse by then. There will be a company that succeeds in this financially. I don't know if it will be Clubhouse. In the future, it will be more natural for the general public to consider this just like making a phone call, getting on and talking instead of to one friend, getting in your room and talking to 20 of your friends, as we do on Clubhouse all day long. But we do that as Clubhouse users. But as that becomes more of a natural thing and a common thing, it will then the user base will grow. But I don't know that society is there yet. It might be a case where society was there for the special context of the pandemic because we were all locked away in our homes. And once that went away, now we're waiting for society to grow to a point where this is more commonplace. And once it's very commonplace, then they will have the user base to sustain the platform. That's what I would put forth.
I don't know. I think it's because the relationships are reciprocal. They feed into each other. And so saying that it only works in one direction, I think is what I'm fundamentally disagreeing with. I think that if you enhance the user's experience, you incentivize users to maximize their engagement and also maximize their willingness to get other people that they know into that engagement that they value. And then on top of that, like you'll make it the kind of thing that will maximize more users, which then you can show and present as data to investors and then get more money. So I think that those things are like reciprocal relationships. They feed into each other. And I understand that there's going to be some technical obstacles in terms of like getting the amount of coders staffed to like create these things. You might have to redesign everything from the ground up if you're gonna encompass certain kinds of features that are not available yet, and that might be extremely expensive. And so there's going to need to be an initial investment for the enhancement. Though that's an obstacle, for example. But my point is, if you were able to do that, if you were able to enhance the user's experience in such a amazing way, a fundamental way, where where now users are like, wow, like all of these new things are really, really dope. I really like being on Clubhouse because like X, Y, and Z feature, I've been waiting for that for so long. Or some new features like I didn't even think about this, but now this is really fucking fun. Like that's the kind of thing that generates buzz. That's the kind of thing that maximizes social networking on social media websites or platforms. Um, so I mean, like even on Twitter, people who have been begging for certain kinds of features that should have been on Twitter, and I don't even think it would be difficult to do, which is like the edit feature, for example, is something that I heard. Like, I feel like you should be able to edit your tweets. I don't know why that's not a feature. I don't know, like what is the rationale for that not being a thing already? That's annoying. People still use Twitter though, but like Elon Musk was talking about doing a subscription model where that, among other features, is what you get as a part of your subscription. And the rationale is pretty much the same. It's like there's certain kinds of enhancements that would make the user's experience better. They value it. They're willing to pay $8 to $9 a month for it. Then, I think he needed to do more stuff than just that. But like the general idea of enhancing the user's experience for a premium is actually like very common. It's how freemium games work, actually.
Yeah, but I would say it is common, and it's also a failed business model. When you look at all of the freemium internet companies that have come and gone, where you use the site for free, and then when you love it so much, you're going to pay $20 a month. Well, people, or you use it for free for 2 months, and then it automatically starts charging your credit card, and that model has not been confirmed to be a good model. It is a model that many startups use. Also, that the freemium part is usually paid for by advertising. The company still has to receive revenue to run the company. So when they're offering the free service, there's usually an advertising component that the user needs to deal with, which we don't yet really have on Clubhouse. The freemium, it works for some things, but the vast number of internet startups that we've seen, and the boom and all this, many of that relied on the freemium model, and there's a big question about whether that's a good model anymore. And I'm not sure that financially it has proven itself yet. So
I think it has, but not in the social media space. So, for
yeah,
example, Spotify is a subscription model.
sure,
It's
sure.
pretty fucking successful.
It is, but then you don't have to buy CDs or records. You get, the entire library for one monthly payment. So if you weren't,
Fair enough, but
that's a different
but what that means is they've created a certain threshold of value where it makes it worth paying for. And what I'm saying is that's the strategy, and that would determine whether or not this model would be successful as adopted to social media.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying.
I could see they can add tiers of membership and create paid tiers and a free tier. That's certainly a strategy that internet
I
companies
mean,
have.
even Zoom has
Yeah,
a subscription model, so it's not like it can't work in principle. It just hasn't worked yet, right? And
correct.
so like you're not wrong to express doubt about it because it hasn't. There's really no proof of concept really yet. But I'm simply saying that the economic mechanisms I'm citing are just they're well known. Like if you create enough value, you can justify subscription models,
Sure,
particularly anything that's capable of generating content. And
sure.
that's exactly what Clubhouse is capable of.
It is. I'm just wary about thinking people are going to pay for this. I mean, the problem becomes also it is not difficult, and it happened. You read it in the article to create copycat apps when Clubhouse was at its height. As you said, they came out with all these other apps: Twitter Spaces, Reddit. We mentioned Lobby. There's a couple others that have come and gone. When one app starts to charge money, and people may or may not protest or be into that, then a different one will come up duplicating the first app, but come up with a way to do it, without charging the user. And so there's always going to be competitive or copycat apps. And so I don't know. I don't see there being a way to really lock it in. I think the secret is going to be, again, when the user base is hundreds of millions of daily users,
Right.
then there won't be a problem. There will be enough eyeballs. You can add some advertising revenue. You can maybe have a paid tier. And even if only 30% of the users of the 100 million users, that's 30 million people, pay $5 a month, that's $150 million a month. So it's not really a question. You need the user base to be profitable. In order to be profitable, you need a very large and increasing user base. And that is the problem that Clubhouse has, that there is no increasing user base. And it's not because, some of these features aren't here. It's because there's not the market for it right now. There's not enough people interested in spending hours and hours on an audio media app at this time. Like there was during
But podcasting is at an all-time high.
Yeah, but
there are people who are interested in doing this. They would just want to do it in a way where they can maximize their dollars. They can monetize it, and Clubhouse doesn't facilitate that. That's the fundamental disconnect. It's not a lack of interest in this kind of thing. That's not the issue.
But a podcast is a discrete show, 1 or 2 hours. This one's 2 hours that you can listen to at your a listener can choose to download and listen to while they're driving at their leisure, whatever it is. And it's on and off. They're not. Right. Clubhouse, being a constant user, is an active thing. You have to keep coming on. You have to interact with the people. You have to run your club. Right. All of these different things. These are time commitments. It's not like downloading a podcast and listening to it for 2 hours and then, turning on the radio. If you really want to, and in fact, if you're saying it's these features that are going to increase the user base, but you have to prove that people will invest the time into the app to even find and use these features. They have to have people, non-Clubhouse, non-social audio users, like all of my friends in the real world who don't use it, they have to have some desire to even use this kind of thing to begin with. And when that desire existed at its greatest was during the pandemic. So that's when the demand was there. There was a special circumstance. So I posit that as time goes on, without the pandemic, with no pandemic in society, there will be a natural growth in the user base because this type of communication will become more common. And then people will desire it, and then there will be demand. And I think they're just a little bit too early in that demand curve right now. That's what I think. I think they thought we were there. We thought it was there, but that was really just because of the special pandemic circumstance where we were stuck in our house and the only way to communicate with people was to use apps like this. But now that that's over, we're learning that there aren't enough people in society to make this at this very moment that hundreds of millions of active users per day. That's what I would say.
There aren't enough people in society on a planet of like 8 billion to sustain 100 million active users a day.
Where are they? You're telling me that's just because Clubhouse is lacking, a feature or two, or isn't running, a raffle.
No, I'm not. I don't know why you're zeroing in on the features. What I'm saying is that the user's experience on Clubhouse could be better, right? And
Yeah.
if you enhance the user experience on Clubhouse in ways that are actually very doable in principle, the kinds of features that I have in mind are not, they're not unheard of. They're not things that you can't design. It's not like you have to like it's not like you have to break new ground in terms
No,
of
you can. I'm
computer
not saying they
coding.
can't be designed. I admit you can. They're easily designed and
Okay.
implemented. That's, but I'm saying that's
That's
the issue. That's
no,
what
no.
I'm.
But what I'm saying is, the talk of the features is just one way to get at the enhancement of the user experience. Another way to enhance user experience that's not related to features per se would be content moderation. Another way to enhance user experience is by having a lot of notable people on the app interacting with their
That's true.
fans. These are all ways to enhance the user experience.
Sure.
I was honing in on features because that's something I really like, but there's a bunch of ways to maximize the user experience.
I would argue, no matter what, at this time, no matter what you do to maximize the user experience, I would argue it's not going to materially change that demand curve. That is not. It doesn't seem to be the case. What will change it will be time and technology continuing to normalize this kind of interaction through a phone, through a smartphone, instead of it being normal. Okay, like, you know how we don't leave voicemails anymore. Like, do you leave voicemails when someone's voicemail comes on?
No.
When you call some, right? We don't. Nobody uses that anymore. It's still there, right? Because what happened over time?
People use it, but I don't. It's rare. I understand what you're saying.
It's more rare, right? But what happened is over time, what became normalized was, instead of leaving this voice message, I'm just going to text this person, right? Or I'm going to pretty much text them or email them. Now it's text. And that became the normalized thing. And what I'm trying to say, what I think is going to happen is, you won't really make an individual phone call as much. It will become more normalized to log into a community like this, or that will be your communication. And then you can decide who you want to talk to and do all that. But we're not there yet. We're still, using our cell phones to call people directly. And I think that the demand curve needs to be such that the society is, like I said, when it comparable to when we stopped leaving voicemails, when we took that leap from, we're not going to do that, but we are going to send texts. So we're not going to want to watch TV so much, but we are going to want to enter one of these online communities and have these great conversations with people all around the globe. That's a cultural thing that hasn't really happened yet. And I think that as technology continues, and this is Zuckerberg's hope with the metaverse, that we're all just going to walk into this metaverse and that's going to be our normality, which I don't think is going to happen. But with Clubhouse, I don't think enough people are into this constant social audio chat in your ear the way you and I have enjoyed it. I just think that, I'll just give you I have two brothers, right? Neither of them, not only don't they use it, but of course they make fun of me for using it. So if I said to them, come use this, come try this, they're not really that interested. And if I went out on the street in my city and I stopped 50 people walking by where I live, almost all of them don't use Clubhouse, I would venture to say. Why? Because they're not interested. And that's the demand issue that you have to figure out. Or Clubhouse has to figure out, how do you get those people interested? And I don't think that so far the things I've heard are going to materially change that.
Well, you can enhance the user's experience to make them interested, and you can add the ability to do things that are currently not able to do that would serve their interests. I mean, if their interest, for example, in engaging in social media apps is to like discuss sports, that's like a specific niche that they have.
Sure.
And you enable that with relative ease to have watch parties for certain kinds of games. Now, there's a huge obstacle because the NBA has exclusive rights to streaming and stuff like that. But my point is, if you were to enable something like that, I guarantee you would attract a lot of motherfuckers who are really, really into sports, and who that would be the sole reason why they came to Clubhouse.
Sure, but we have that capability right now. You can create a watch party room. Any number of sports fans can get together and create that room. Does it happen? I mean, yes. When we had the Super Bowl, there were several rooms open. They didn't have more than 40 or 50 users in them. Nobody cares.
Well, fair enough. But what I'm saying is the enhancement would be like actually being able to watch that shit together,
Okay,
synchronized.
but wait a minute. Is that even an enhancement? So now I get to see
Yeah.
this thing on my little phone screen. I mean, I'd rather have it on my big screen TV and just be in the communication conversation room on Clubhouse at the same time. I don't even know if having
Well,
a thing
never.
is on my
That's
screen is going to be something that's going to be enjoyable for me.
right. That's you though. But what I'm saying is
For any
what you're
sports
doing
fan.
is well. So what would be attractive potentially is the fact that it's synchronized and everybody's watching it at the same time. When people watch it on their big screen, part of the reason that it's not as valuable is because some people are earlier than others in their streams for whatever reason. And
Mhm.
so like some people are reacting early to something you haven't seen yet. And so it makes it like it's kind of like spoilery. And
Okay,
so that
I'll
that
give
is like a that sucks for the experience point of view.
sure.
So like if you are eliminating that by having some kind of synchronization of people watching it together and commenting on it live or more or less live or at least synchronized, that would be an enhancement of that experience on Clubhouse is
Right,
my
and
point.
so instead of 40 people in the room, you'd have 80, and so if each of them pays you $1, you're making it. It's not, I don't see it. No offense.
Well, I don't know why you're assuming it would only double. Like for all we know, it could be 1,000 people in the room. We don't know that. The point I'm making is the enhancement of the experience is the thing that has the greatest potential to draw more people who aren't already involved or aren't already
And
engaged.
I think what I'm saying is the enhancements are only small percentages of the user experience. The main user experience, the 90% of it, is what already exists. These enhancements are cherries on top. They will attract a limited number of additional users, but you need the key is that the 90%, which is always going to be what it is. That's what social media is. It's a place where you can easily gather and talk to multiple people in a room using a smartphone, right? That's not going to change. That's what it is. So when you have that being a popular thing, then let me know and I'll write you a check. But if that's not a popular thing right now, it's not extremely popular. It's only a small percentage of our actual population seems to be interested in using this technology at this time. That's what I would say.
All right. I did want to get this into the show. This is the article from Protocol. This was written in June, so last summer, June 3rd, 2022. Clubhouse is losing talent in Steam. The number of downloads fell 80% year over year from the first half of 2021 to the first half of 2022, and top execs are running for the exits. So the whole tenor of this article is basically that Clubhouse is a sinking ship, and some of the captains are jumping onto the lifeboats and rowing away before it sinks too much. Live social audio was once a hot trend. Platforms were racing to develop audio tools that could compete with the pandemic darling Clubhouse, but the best days of Clubhouse and its competitors seem to be behind them. Several Clubhouse executives have headed for the exit recently. In late April, Stephanie Simon left as the company's head of brand evangelism and development. Simon joined Clubhouse just a couple of months after launch in 2020. Then this week, three more leaders announced their resignations, including Nina Gregory, Arthur Ramamurthy, and Anu Atluru, and the trio led news, international, and community, respectively. Clubhouse wouldn't be where it is today without them, a spokesperson told Protocol. Of the departed executives, we're immensely grateful for everything that they have done, and we know that they'll do great in the future. Ramamurthy's departure, when we read about her earlier, is particularly notable. Enhance this for my audience. She's married to Sriram Krishnan, a partner for AI6Z, a major Clubhouse investor. The pair used to host, quote, the Good Time Show on Clubhouse, but they recently turned to broadcasting as live on YouTube instead. Ramamurthy and other departed leaders did not return requests for comment. Let's see, Atluru's Exodus, I hope I'm saying that right, is also eyebrow rising, as she was one of Clubhouse's earliest employees. She was an investor in the app Series A round and more recently provided seed funding to the buzzy social media platform BeReal. Gregory came to Clubhouse from NPR, where she was a senior editor in the arts. last paragraph I'm gonna read. The social audio platform has been struggling for some time, and the departures are another sign that Clubhouse is in trouble, but they're hardly the only one. The platform is also struggling to hold an audience. Between January 1st and May 31st, Clubhouse saw 3.8 million installs globally, compared to 19 million installs during the same period last year. According to the Sensor Tower data, that's an 80% drop year over year. When the company was riding high a year ago, Clubhouse was valued at $4 billion. After a round of Series C funding, it's unclear, though, how much the company is worth today. So Clubhouse has been having some problems. They apparently raised $12 million last fall. I didn't know that. It was Discord just launched a Clubhouse clone. So no, sorry, Discord raised that money, not Clubhouse. Twitter Space. So they're talking about other competitors. So this is doom and gloom, sinking ship, all that good stuff. It kind of feeds into some of the stuff that you were saying. I personally am not really willing to concede that nothing can be done. But I do think it'll be an uphill battle, because the kinds of enhancements of the user experience that I'm talking about are going to require some technical stuff on Clubhouse's end, and I don't know if they have enough money to fund that. So that's an actual, like, I think the best rebuttal to the kind of thing I'm promoting. But all of your rebuttals seem to just be pessimistic. You seem to just not have faith that enhancing the quality of the user experience is the kind of thing that can draw more users.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think Clubhouse is, I'm not doom and gloom on Clubhouse overall. I'm just disagreeing with this concept that simply enhancing the user experience is going to generate the demand sufficient for, like, the 100 million user base that you would need to really have this thing do what the founders wanted to do. What I think it will survive, I hope, and it just may be a much slower ride, and it's slow and steady. It's not going to grow the way it did during the pandemic. Adding special, even amazing features, I don't think is going to change that. But I do think over time, slow and steady, as demand increases, again, just due to the nature of technology in society continuing to permeate and become more preferable, a preferable medium to use, just like instead of voicemails, we'll just send a text. It's just that technology became accepted and common, and that has not happened yet for these group social audio chat applications. I think that if Clubhouse can find a way to go slow and steady, then there will be a natural increase over time in the demand curve as that technology becomes, again, more permeated into culture and society and habit of humans, which just doesn't exist right now for most people. Again, I can go and talk to my friends, my brothers, my people outside of myself who uses Clubhouse, and I can talk to them who don't, and I'll have a difficult time convincing them to even give it a try. They're just not interested. Now, that doesn't mean I think Clubhouse is going to die. It just means I don't buy into all we have to do is add all of these spiffy features and everyone's going to come. I just think that maybe it's a slow and steady thing, and that's what we're going to see.
I mean, agree to disagree. I think that it would depend on what the features were, though. I don't know that I don't know that you're thinking of features the way I'm thinking of features. Mostly because I wasn't as specific as I could have been. But I do think that there are certain types of features that would generate buzz and generate demand. I mean, what else can generate demand if not creating value? That's the whole point of creating value.
You can create all the value you want, but if there's no market for it, then there's no demand for it.
But you can create markets for it, is my point.
You can create markets for it, but there has to be a sufficient number of interested parties in the underlying experience and technology to begin with for them to even consider, entering that market. If it was so much fun and so popular, why is it dying?
Well,
because only a small percentage of human beings even want to engage
given the current state of the experience.
I don't agree with that because even with all your changes, again, 90% of the experience is already there right now. That's not going to
You
change.
don't even know what the experiences are that I have in
You
my
told me you can add video. I mean, there's a limited number of
I
things.
told you some things.
You can sync up the Super Bowl. You can add video. You can do all these things, but you're just adding some paint over what is essentially the foundation of a social audio experience, which is going into a room, unmuting, speaking, being moderated. None of those things really are going to change.
So if you drew a whole bunch of celebrity creators to this app, you don't think that would enhance the popularity of the app at all?
It would. You'd get additional users from their fan base. It would. That would.
Okay.
But I don't think that would again cause the what you need is kind of a shift in the culture overall to where people are desiring to use this kind of technology on a regular basis.
So you go get influencers and celebrities who have a wide following to do just that. Like what we're saying is not inconsistent or incompatible. I think a better rebuttal to what I'm saying is that it's actually difficult to accomplish what I'm saying.
I would argue that influencers, bringing a celebrity or two or even 10, you'll have some big rooms when they're there running the rooms,
right.
And when they're not, you'll have a small percentage of those extra users that came for that celebrity who might open their own room and talk on the app. But I don't think that just because celebrities are using it, that means people will come to hear them do their rooms because they're fans. But it doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to stay and change their lifestyle to become one of a regular social audio user, which we should say for people in the audience who don't know what that means. It means you wake up, you go to a room or club where the regular people are gathering, you speak with them. You may run a room, your friend may run a room, you may go into a newsroom, you may go to work or drive somewhere, but you have an earbud in your ear listening to what's going on and chiming in every now and then. So it's a different lifestyle. It's one of constantly having a communication literally in your ear or in your brain that is a group communication that you can either listen to or participate in. And it's a constant thing. And it's just, in my opinion, that hasn't become a thing that the majority of human beings desire to do at this moment. But I do believe as we go forward, the nature of developing technology and how culture and our society will change because of that technology will make this a more regular thing. And that's when the demand curve will go through the charts. But you can't make that happen. You're waiting, you're there earlier than society. Now, society was there temporarily during the pandemic. But once that ended, now we're back to where we were. Now we're going to wait for life to become even more involved in the use of technology.
I think you underestimate the ability to shape or formulate norms regarding technology use in society. I think that the existence of digital marketing or various forms of marketing is a testament to how that kind of
currently
socially engineered.
Currently failing. All of the the revenue sources of Facebook, other big companies that were completely reliant on advertising, that is dwindling. That is no longer an acceptable proposal for a startup, is simply to rely on advertising. That's not going to work. It hasn't worked, and it's not working. It's working for a select few companies. Google, wound up having pretty much a monopoly or close to one on a lot of the ads and banner ads and different things that we've seen on the internet. The people, the revenue that's paid per eyeball to see an ad is extremely expensive. There are questions about whether it's a good return on investment. Startups spend so much money just putting banners out there and getting their ads out there for eyeballs, but the click-through rate is questionable. The profitability is questionable. It's not been, Jason, the best model.
My point isn't that it's been the best model. I'm just, the only thing I'm trying to defend, and this is the last time I'm gonna say it, is that there is a pathway forward via enhancing the user experience to attract more daily active users and more new users. That's all I was trying to say. As far as the obstacles to actually accomplishing that are concerned, I haven't really addressed that. In terms of to whatever extent Clubhouse has not used the best models, or to whatever extent a subscription model in particular is not the best model moving forward, I haven't really argued that for or against that per se. Although I guess I have said that in principle it could work, or in theory it could work. But I don't know that it actually will work if Clubhouse actually tries to do it. But enhancing the user experience on any kind of social media platform is very key to maximizing daily active users and new users. I just think that that's true. I don't even think that's controversial. So if you want to agree still, you can have the last word, and then we'll just agree to disagree. And then we got 4 minutes now to wrap up.
Cool. I mean, yeah, enhancing user experience in general is a positive thing. It will increase the people who are already using it. It will probably increase their use. It may attract a marginal number of new users, but just personally, and really, it's my intuition just from having used the app for so long that won't solve the problem. That's my feeling, and I think it's based on my idea that there aren't enough people in society in general who have a desire to engage in this in the manner that would be required for it to become a self-sustaining thing. And that's where I would leave it there. I do believe that as the future goes on, that the demand curve will increase naturally as even more technology and communication become part of people's daily lives. And it becomes more natural for everyone to constantly have that earbud in their ear where they're in a room with 20 or 30 other people. But I just don't think we're there yet. There are too many people who just are like, why the hell would I even want that? Like my friends that aren't on it, the other people, the normal people in the world.
The normal people. So I guess we're abnormal.
Maybe.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. You've been a guest on the Black Muse podcast. You're a man of your word. We did have to reschedule, but I'm glad you got to come on here.
Thank you, Jason.
I have 2 questions that I'm norming on asking people. Number 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best experience you've ever had, 1 being the worst, how was your experience on the Black Muse podcast today?
10.
Don't just say it. I want an honest answer.
You mean best experience of my life, or of like being interviewed on a podcast?
Yeah, being interviewed on a podcast.
10.
Awesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very likely, 1 being not likely at all, how likely are you to come back on the Black Muse podcast?
It's very likely. Number 10.
It's gonna be 10. Okay. And then if you come next time, you're gonna be ready to show your face.
Please don't dox me, Jason.
I'm not gonna dox you. I just wanted to ask you that question. It's a very provocative question. You're the first person who I've allowed to not show their face on my podcast.
Well, I mean,
it's not a bad thing.
I don't think I mean, people should have the option, because things like this are permanent on the internet. So everyone should have the option of whether they wish to show their face or not. I don't see that being a problem. And I thank you for allowing me to do it this way.
Yeah, but I'm never gonna allow it again.
Why? Why not?
Because I've actually put a lot of value into the visual. I never wanted to do an audio only podcast. I really wanted to do a visual one. So you are going to be the only one ever. This is going to be very
honored that you made the exception for me.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you off and wrap up. If you can hang back just a quick second while I wrap up, and then I'll speak to you, and then we'll go back to Clubhouse. All right. Sorry, I accidentally brought myself off because I'm dumb sometimes. Let me cue the music. All right. That has been an episode of the Black Muse Podcast. I want to thank my special guest, Ben Yamin, for being a guest on the podcast. Shout out to everybody who was listening in on Clubhouse, because as I understand it, we were able to stream live to Clubhouse. Hopefully that y'all enjoyed that. It's been about 2 hours. I'm feeling kind of good. That tea that I had earlier kind of helped my voice a little bit. I'm going to get some more. But yeah, to my wonderful audience members, all 3 of y'all, I had a wonderful time doing this podcast episode. And until next time, peace.